Before time, nothing was. The still, black waters covered the expanses. Darkness reigned, and there was only the terrible deep. And yet, through the nothingness, God stirred. For God was when the world was not. God existed in the nothingness that could be anything, and God was inspired. God looked through the deep, through the still black waters, into the darkness, and he saw the potential for what could become. And so God summoned from within him a great light, and it burst forth from his being and covered the nothingness with something. And it was a terrible light, a beautiful light, a brilliant light, and it crackled with an energy that was before known only to God. And with the creation of light, time began. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day.
Then God was ready to prepare a home to bestow his love upon. So he stirred up the waters of the deep, and some stayed as solid earth, while the rest rose up to form the vast expanse of sky. Now this sky was to be the boundary between the world confined to time and the space outside of time. Yet this boundary was porous, translucent, made up of raindrop next to raindrop. Then God looked upon this earth, protected underneath the great sky, and he saw that it was a fitting place to move within.
And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. Now God passed through the barrier that he had created into the land that was bound by time, and he stared over the still, blue waters. And he placed his finger in the water and twirled, and the water began to swirl, and it swirled and piled on one another until all of the water was gathered into one place, the sea, the beautiful ocean. And where the water once was, there was now dry ground, which God called land. And God moved over the land, and in his wake, vegetation bloomed. A thick carpet of lush grass cushioned the earth. Flowers bloomed. Trees rose from the depths of the earth, providing refuge from the great light and bearing fruit. And the air was filled with the sweet scent of life. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day.
Then God looked upon the earth, crackling and brimming with light. Yet this passion for potential was growing a little too hot. So God blew to cool the earth, and as he did so, the light split into two orbs. The greater orb, the sun, to light the day, the lesser orb, the moon, to illuminate the night. And God blew again and sent these three orbs, careening and spinning into a beautiful dance. God looked upon this and was happy, so he didn't stop there. He scooped up a handful of glimmering sand from beside the seas and tossed it out past the sky to hang as stars in the darkness. Now these stars would call people to look past the barrier of sky, to wonder and to know that there was beyond. That people might write their stories in the constellations, so even as one generation withered and faded to the next, their stories would remain cast immortal in the eternal sky.
And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. Now God knew that the earth was ready to hold living creatures. And so the ocean, the great, powerful, mysterious Mother Ocean, gave birth to a multitude of sea creatures. The small, playful fish that frolic through the light places of the ocean, and the sea monsters of old who roamed through the deep, dark depths. And God moved his hand over the top of the ocean and gathered the sea foam in his hands, and he blew his breath of life into them. And when he opened his hands, all of the winged creatures and birds flew out free at last to live in the great, beautiful sky. And the air was filled with the flutter of wings, and the cry of the hawk, and the song of the sparrow. And so the world knew music for the first time. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day.
Then God looked to the dry earth and drug his fingers across the dust and the dew, and he called forth creatures from the land, creatures to gallop over streams and scamper across the fields, to scurry up the trees and to lumber over the ice. These animals were beautiful, and they trusted that they would be cared for. God looked upon them and was inspired to take a risk, to bring forth beings in the image of God, to be creators, namers, lovers, with the capacity to doubt. So God called forth human, man and woman, and gave them the choice of what to do and what to believe. Yet God also imbued us with a sense of wonder, that we might feel the passion for love within our souls and search out its source, that we might be seeking out God just as God is seeking us.
And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. And on the seventh day, God rested, so that he could step back and take in all that he had created. The beloved creatures of the sea and of the sky and of the earth, the sweet vegetation that covered the land, and the potential that had finally been realized. And God knew that he would never again be alone, for God had creation.
And creation had God. They were separate but one, to live and move and have their being together, forever and ever, world without end. Amen.